This is the part 3 of lecture in which we will explain game theory and the economics of cooperation with the help of prisoner's dilemma, which is the one of the examples of game theory. Basically, prisoner's dilemma provides insight into the difficulty in maintaining cooperation. It tells us what difficulties people face in maintaining cooperation to get maximum benefit. Often people or firms fail to cooperate with one another even when cooperation would make them better off. They know that they will be better off by cooperating each other and obtain maximum profits, but most of the times they take their self-interest and they fail to cooperate, and when they fail to cooperate, so they are comparatively less better off as if they cooperate with each other. The prisoner's dilemma is a particular game between two captured prisoners that illustrates why cooperation is difficult to maintain even when it is mutually beneficial. The prisoner's dilemma is a story about two criminals who have been captured by the police. Let's call them Bonnie and Clyde. Both prisoners have to make a decision, and options available to both of them are: Bonnie has two options here, either confess or remain silent, and similar options are available to Clyde as well, whether to confess and or remain silent. Before going to investigation, if they decide to cooperate with each other, then they get benefit. If they decided to remain silent, they spend 1 year in jail. But most of the times it is difficult for individuals to cooperate with each other, even they know that it is beneficial. There are prisoners, and there are sometimes options for prisoners as well to adopt them. Suppose if both of them confess, they spend 8 years in jail. As you can see from this diagram as well, that if both of them confess, then both will go to jail for 8 years. Second option is that Bonnie remains silent and Clyde confess. Then Bonnie gets 20 years in jail and Clyde gets free. Another situation is when Clyde remains silent and Bonnie confess, then Bonnie goes free and Clyde gets 20 years in jail. Last option is where both remain silent and both of them get 1 year in jail. What is the best strategy for both of them here? Let's suppose that police investigate them individually, and when police investigate Bonnie, she doesn't know what Clyde is going to do. So she makes her own decision and confess the crime. On the other hand, when the police investigate Clyde, he also thinks to confess, and in the same way, he spends 8 years in jail. In the language of game theory, a strategy is called a dominant strategy if it is the best strategy for a player to follow regardless of the strategies pursued by other players. In this case, confessing is the dominant strategy for both of them regardless of whether other confess or remain silent. The Nash equilibrium is the first option, that is to confess, but the best strategy for both of them is option 4, that is to remain silent. If they have cooperated with each other, and they will get 1 year in jail if they cooperate with each other. In this slide, we are going to relate prisoner's dilemma with the concept of oligopoly. Again, the dominant strategy is the best strategy for a player to follow regardless of the strategies chosen by other players. Cooperation is difficult to maintain because cooperation is not in the best interest of individual player. But if they cooperate, then they get the maximum benefit. Here we have two countries, that is Iraq and Iran. Both have two options, that is high production and low production. First possibility is that both countries cooperate and decide high production. Then they get $40 billion in return. In the second possibility, when both are not cooperating, Iraq decides low production and gets $30 billion, and Iran decides high production and gets $60 billion, which is the best of its interest. In the third category or a possibility, if Iraq decides high production, then it gets $60 billion here, and Iran decides low production and gets $30 billion. In this way, one country is better off and other one is worse off. And the last possibility is that they both cooperate and make cartel and decide low production, and then both of the countries get $50 billion in return. So the last strategy or Nash equilibrium is where both countries cooperate and decide low production and get $50 billion in return. Here the dominant strategy for both countries is high production regardless of the decision taken by the other country. Oligopolies as a prisoner's dilemma. Now we are going to explain oligopolies as a prisoner's dilemma by taking self-interest. Self-interest makes it difficult for the oligopoly to maintain a cooperative outcome with low production, high prices, and monopoly profits. When firms don't cooperate, their production is high, but they are earning less profits. But when they cooperate, they produce less and supply less and also charge high prices and get high profit, and they act like monopolistic firm, and this is how they make cartels. In this example, on one side there is decision of United States whether to arm or disarm, and on the other side there is a decision of Soviet Union whether to arm or disarm. Again, there are four possibilities. First is where both decide to arm and both are at risk. And the second possibility is when US decides to disarm, and here US is at risk and weak, while on the other side Soviet Union decides to arm and is safe and powerful as well. Now the third possibility is US decides arm and is safe and powerful, and Soviet Union decides to disarm and hence Soviet Union is at risk and weak in that case. And the last possibility is when both countries decide to disarm and both are safe. Now the dominant strategy for both of the countries is not to disarm. If any of the country decides to disarm, it is at risk and weak as the other country decides to arm. But when both decide to keep arm, then both are at risk. So the best strategy is that they cooperate with each other. So the Nash equilibrium is fourth possibility when both countries are safe and they decided to disarm. Why people sometimes cooperate? Firms that care about future profits will cooperate in repeated games rather than cheating in a single game to achieve a one-time gain. When game repeats more than one time, then firms try to cooperate with each other and gain maximum profits. Instead of cheating in a single game, it is better to repeat the game for more than one time and cooperate with each other and obtain maximum profits. Public policy toward oligopolies. Cooperation among oligopolists is undesirable from the standpoint of society as a whole because it leads to production that is too low and prices that are too high. When we are talking about public policies, from the standpoint of customers or a society, it is quite undesirable because when firms cooperate, they make cartels and they act like monopolistic firms and their production is low and they charge high prices. So the government restrained making cartels by introducing antitrust laws. Antitrust laws make it illegal to restrain trade or attempt to monopolize a market. And here are two antitrust laws, that is Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890 and Clayton Act of 1914. And we have discussed both of them in detail in the previous chapters. Controversies over antitrust policy. There are certain controversies over antitrust policies. Antitrust policies sometimes may not allow business practices that have potentially positive effects. So there are controversies in policies that do not allow business practices that have potentially positive effect. And there are few examples. First is resale price maintenance or fair trade occurs when suppliers like wholesalers require retailers to charge a specific amount. Just for instance, if Samsung sells products like mobile phones and LCDs to the retailers, so they sell their products at certain price. Suppose Samsung sells LCDs to retailers at a price of 100,000 rupees and ask the retailer to sell these LCDs at 120,000 rupees. That means 1,20,000 rupees in the market. So that is known as resale price maintenance. At times, antitrust laws discourage these kind of situations. So the second example is predatory pricing. Predatory pricing occurs when a large firm begins to cut the price of its products with the intent of driving its competitors out of the market. For example, Pakistan Airlines, that is PIA, is the largest firm in the country. Suppose a new firm enters the industry. So the PIA tries to sell its tickets to the customers at lower price. Then it would be difficult for other firms to exist in the market. Sometimes this is not considered as a best practice because PIA may be selling tickets at loss and not getting profit, but PIA wants to make its competitor leave the market. That's why PIA is selling tickets at lower price. And in this case, antitrust law discourage this situation as well. And the third one is tying. When a firm offers two or more of its products together at a single price rather than separately. Sometimes firms want to sell products together. Like you can say that their products are of good quality and of cheap quality as well. So they want the good quality product along with the cheap quality product in all together. So they can sell both products and earn profits. If uh, and if they sell the product separately, then the good quality product will be sold and the cheap quality product will not be sold and they face loss. But if they sell both the products together, then they will maximize the profit. And antitrust laws also discourage this practice as well. So now it's the end of the chapter oligopoly.